And we are back on this Martin Luther King weekend. We're continuing the discussion with our good friend Kevin Peterson and my new friend Professor Saida Grundy from BU. And we had a lot of little interesting conversations, in the past segment. But I want us to talk about some of the developments this week and next week, because next week we do have an incoming president. But before we get to that discussion, earlier this week, Tito Jackson, Boston City Council, African American member of the community here, Bostonian, declared that he is a candidate for mayor. African American again. How has that played into the community so far? What's your reaction to it? And is it a good thing? Is it what are your thoughts?
I think it's played positively because Tito Jackson is well known and well liked throughout the city. He is connected with the African American community like few other African American politicians out. He's a district councilor, but he has a very, very large reach into the city, across the city, particularly within African American community. So his announcement the other day was a breath of fresh air to some people in the community who want to see a healthy debate, who want to see certain issues raised and brought to light, in contrast with Mayor Walsh.
Are you one of those folks?
So I'm new to Boston politics. I just came here 2 years ago, and I'm very much nested in the academic community. And I will say what I knew about Boston beforehand was actually quite extensive because Boston has such a long storied history, particularly around racial politics, right? And so there are understandings that I had of Boston's particular racial history. And what I have certainly noticed here, actually, I mean, this is so timely. One of the first thing I noticed, Boston's never had a black mayor, right? This is very strange for a major city, an industrial city in the United States. It's never had a black mayor. It says something about the capacity for black political leadership here, I think. And so I think that is very telling of some racial politics here, that Boston is maybe even a bit different than other similar cities. But also I think that, we have to have leadership that addresses hyper-segregation in Boston. It is a city that often does not feel like other places because it is deeply pocketed and walled off from itself. And so you have people having very different experiences of Boston.
Is that going to come to light given the fact, because last year, last election, in the finals you had two white guys in the finals. Now you automatically have one white guy incumbent and you got Tito's back. So is that topic going to be more in the forefront than even before in the final last time?
I think so. And even in that race 3 years ago, the two white Irish guys, the current mayor confessed to the fact that Boston was a tale of two cities, in terms of race and in terms of income, in terms of our schools, public school systems, our public institutions. There's a serious problem in Boston around race, and I think the opportunity that Tito brings into this race is a broader, deeper, richer conversations about how we solve these problems.
Well, talking about broader, let's jump into a very broad conversation. So let's take this discussion to a national.
Sure.
In a few days, we will have a new president sworn in. President Trump. How does that strike you when you hear President Trump? And be honest, and I'm sure you will.
I mean, I've been preparing myself for this for some time, and I really want to thank those of us who, before November 7th, and I'm not one of them, who actually predicted this, right? There were plenty before November 7th who were very honest about the potential of this happening, where many of us were sticking our heads in the sand and sort of muting out what we didn't want to hear. What is very clear, I mean, if we can take it back to King, again, as a caricature, as a figure, King would not be that interested in Trump. I think that of course King understands, because King was very strategic and very smart, understands the usefulness of Trump in some ways in terms of organizing other types of movements, right?
It's kind of a Bull Connor, right?
But Bull Connor actually was a person who was not just a showman. Bull Connor actually literally put violence behind his words, right? And I think that King would really summon us to look more deeply at those around Trump, right? King would be, in fact, I mean, King might be like, I recognize this Jeff Sessions. You know, he was only a teenager when I was in Alabama, but he looks so familiar, right? So there are ways in which the civil rights movement is really mapped onto what we're doing now. We have some of the same figures who were oppositional to that movement now resurfacing in our country.
Rebranded almost too, right?
Absolutely rebranded. And I think what we really have to be conscious of a country is what King was conscious of. King was not that impressed by white extremes of racism. It was moderates to whom he held to the fire, right?
Really?
And he said this in his words. He said this in a letter from a Birmingham jail. And in fact, his words just, they're so profound, they just heave with greatness, right? But he says this, that he says, I am much more taxed and much more he's almost exacerbated by white moderates.
Well, someone told me here, I think it was in an Urban Day show, where the South is a lot different, where in the South, they let you know right up front.
Right.
Whereas here, there is
a little less
maybe even hypocritical, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing about King, you know, were he here today, I think he would see this as a strategic moment, an opportunity. King was a follower of the philosopher Hegel. So he believed, in terms of history, he believed in progress, ultimately.
Long term.
Long term. So he would see this, what may be perceived as a roadblock, as an opportunity for the progressive wing of the Democratic Party and the progressive wing of the faith-based communities to organize and look towards addressing issues that that Trump may be putting under duress.
And he would always be pointing us towards the conversation that is not in the forefront, right? You know, he would always be pointing us to what is bubbling below the surface.
That's right. That's right.
This is great. I mean, this conversation is something that I want to thank both of you for coming. I know we extended it a little bit. We had 2 segments, but I think it was worth it because of the weekend.
So I do want to talk for 30 seconds about an important forum.
Absolutely.
Coming this week on Wednesday, January 18th at Grace Church of
And
All
I'm
Nations.
hoping SoCo.
Faith-based communities talking about how
No,
they're
I want to make
dealing
sure
with,
she finds the graphic.
Okay.
I want to cue my, if she can, please. There's a graphic somewhere up there about an event that you're going to talk to me a little bit about, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it's a very important forum. Black faith leaders across the city are coming together to respond to how the church is addressing issues that are being impacted by the poor and the vulnerable in the city. And that's a very rich conversation that needs to be had. I'm glad it's happening. I'm going to be the moderator.
That's right.
Okay. So I invite your viewers to come out. And it's free.
That's free. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And you don't go away because we're going to talk a little bit about mentorship. Have you ever mentored?
I have.
You good? Good man. Good man.
Yeah.
Have you mentored?
Yes, unofficially and perhaps
Well, we're
officially.
going to get you on board, Boston Mentoring, okay? When we come back, and Big Brothers and Big Sisters. That's a great organization. So we'll have all that and more right here in our last segment here on Urban Update. Come on back.